Hi, everyone. It's Janice from the Divorcing Religion podcast. I'm excited to tell you that my book is now for sale. It's called Divorcing Religion, a memoir and survival handbook. And I'll make sure you have a link in the notes for that. And also, I want to encourage you to like, subscribe, and become a member of my YouTube channel. Take care. Everyone, welcome to the Divorcing Religion podcast. I'm your host, Janice Selby. I'm a registered professional counselor and a religious trauma recovery coach. I do have a bit of important information to let you know. Those of you who are interested in the Shameless Sexuality Conference, it was going to be happening in Seattle. It's now going to be online. And so that's great for you because that means more of you can attend. And I have been able to slash the ticket price too. So go to shamelesssexuality.org to find out more. And without further ado, I'm going to get to our lovely guests today. I'm excited to interview Patti and Nancy, who recently interviewed me on their popular APOSTATE Sisters YouTube channel. Patti and Nancy are sisters deconstructing their upbringing in the worldwide Church of God Christian Doomsday cult. The sisters note that the cult stifled their critical thinking and warped their sense of autonomy. They decided to start their YouTube channel to unpack the impacts of a high-control religion, from bodily autonomy to mental health, and share their healing journey with humor and honesty. You can find the Apostate Sisters on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Blue Sky. Yay! Welcome, Patti and Nancy. I'm so glad to have you both here today.
Hello, Janice. Thank you for the invite. It's like we just saw you.
I know. I had so much fun on your channel. Thanks for inviting me. That was really good.
We just released your interview, actually. Yeah. You see it?
Yes. It was great.
Yeah. I was going to say, I just feel like I spent the last couple of days with you because I was just editing your episode.
Yeah. Oh, you're the editor. Very nice. Very good.
We both
Excellent.
do. Nancy kind of does the first run through and has the major content editing. And then I go in and do the little things and bookend it.
Fine tuning.
Make it ready.
Yeah. Who's older? Who was born first? You were. How much older are you?
I'm 2 years older than Nancy, and I'm just going to tell it because I'm 45. So there you go.
Wow, 45 looking good these days. Wow, that's awesome.
Thank you.
And do you have other siblings as well, or just the two of you?
Oh, we do. Actually, we are the two oldest of four. So we do have a younger brother and a younger sister.
Mm-hmm. And are they still in the cult?
It's really hard to describe.
Yeah.
Our little brother has taken a lot of the same sort of traumas. Obviously, they're different because he's a penis owner. We are not. And so we can get into that dynamic later. But he still takes some of the fundamentalist rules of the cult, such as from time to time, he won't eat pork or shellfish. But sometimes he will.
Oh.
He doesn't
just he needs to feel holy, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of what I'm sorry. This is what a lot of Christians do,
They're cherry picking, shellfish picking.
And my brother's no different. He thinks he's doing something right by occasionally following some of those rules. I doubt he celebrates Christmas either because we weren't raised with it. But our little sister is a special needs, and so she is still living at home. It is what it is. She's wrapped up in it, doesn't have any thoughts about it, I'm sure.
Yeah. And so do you still have interaction with your other family members since you left?
I probably do more so than Patti. I know they had a bit of a falling out. If Patti wants to tell it, she can, but they don't reach out to us. We don't have like a healthy relationship with, at least with our parents. They're like empty shells of human beings. They don't call us unless there's some major thing in the family, like our mother has open surgery, and then we get a call maybe 2-3 weeks later. Oh, well, this happened, by the way. Oh, thanks for letting us know. So that is the relationship between our folks. My brother, I'm a little bit more in touch with, but it's not like the relationship that my sister and I have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. For my piece of that, what Nancy was alluding to there is the fact that for several years, I was doing a thing where, well, once I decided Facebook wasn't a place I wanted to hang out, I started creating monthly photo albums to send to a small collection of friends and family just to keep up, right? Because I moved
Nice.
across the country a few years ago. And 1 month of pictures that went to my dad included photos of me and my family at Pride here in town.
Oh, wow.
And I was asked in no uncertain terms to not send pictures anymore because it made him too sad to see people he loved doing things that were against God's law.
Wow. Like loving other people.
Like loving other people, like living our life.
Mhm.
Yes. So at that point, I was like, well, you don't actually like want to see me or
No.
care what your grandkids are into. Like your entire focus is on this cult and you're expecting the end to come and that's all you care about. And I'm really sad for you about that. But like, I'm going to stop throwing my pearls before swine, you know? Like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Powerful. And so that was that put a halt to additional communication.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we were living up in Minnesota, Wisconsin area when they moved to South Carolina. And so that was right when I was starting college. Nancy was living on her own just out of high school, or just barely out of high school when they decided to move because they were following another end time prophet. And so,
Oh,
was
wow.
separate from our cult, that now they've left and gone back to our cult. So yeah, it was a
Wow.
little
It's
chaos for
worse.
them. Well, they were trying to find their footing, I think. You know, our
Mhm.
cult kind of started dissolving its traditional thoughts, its traditional ways of doing things by the time we were teenagers. So we say it fell away from us, but it fell away from our parents too. You know, they had dedicated 20 plus years of their life at that point. Now we're talking 50.
Yeah.
Um, they
Oh,
had
so they weren't
dedicated.
born into it. They weren't born into it. Your folks
No,
joined as adults.
they did.
But
Mhm.
Mm.
60s or 70s, correct, Pats? Is that
In
around
the
the time
70s.
they,
Mhm.
yeah, like got married and, well, they met in the church, correct?
Yes. So our
Yes.
mom was actually married to someone else. And by the way she says, for the first year, happily so. And then she joined the cult. And her husband was kind of like, not what I signed up for. So that lasted for a total of 3 years before he left her. And then she was a part of the, singles group at church. And it went the way it went. But
Oh,
I do
so
think there was always a little bit of a stain on their marriage just
mm,
because of the way our church believed about marriage. Like Nancy knows more about this, but it was a divorce and remarriage program where the church tried to tell people that if you were divorced from someone and remarried, you needed to divorce the person you remarried to and try to go back to the other person. And if they wouldn't take you back, like you just were stuck and that was your lot in life or something. I mean,
wow.
they did a
Even
lot
if,
of things to put people into, I'm in sin and I don't have any way out of it.
yes.
That
Mm.
kept them trapped, I think. So
Mm.
since they had dissolved that program by the time our parents got married. But since our mother had been married before, she couldn't wear a white dress when she married our dad, which it's fine. Their wedding was like a backyard potluck instead of a big thing. Like, who cares? That's great. But the way I took it was kind of like, you're doing it this way because it's not really good enough.
Yeah, you're a second class. Yeah. Wow. And so, Nancy, why do you know more about it, or what do you have more to say about the divorce and remarriage?
In general, I have just done, I would say, pretty extensive studies on our cult leader. Herbert W. Armstrong was the founder of that. In fact, we have a 6-part series on our channel. I can go through some of the details, but I did a lot of research when Patti and I started kicking this off because I did kind of want to get into my parents' mindset. I'm like, what were they thinking when they got into this? What were the tactics that this man used to control people? And so that's how I learned about the divorce and remarriage program. A lot of people unalived themselves because of this situation. Families broke apart. There were so many divorces that did not need to happen. It was essentially, you're married to someone, you get divorced and even if you didn't remarry. People that did remarry, they had to divorce who they were currently married to because they were living in sin, even if that's what I was trying to say, even if they couldn't go back to the previous person that they were married to. How awful is that? That went on for quite some time. Those were, I want to say 60s and 70s. Maybe they ended before the 70s. I don't know.
It's very culty, by the way. Very culty behavior, telling people who they can be with and sleep with and who they cannot be with.
Well, not just that. It goes back to the bite model, which I know you're familiar with, Dr. Stephen Hassan. We do reference his bite model quite often as far as the power and control tactics that people use in other people's everyday lives, down to what you eat. We couldn't eat pork or shellfish, or there was something else, Pat. What am I forgetting?
You can't wear a white wedding dress, apparently.
Yeah.
That might be more social, but I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either.
But yeah.
It was Old Testament stuff. It was like the Old Testament food rules. So all the little things where they could control, one of my very first thoughts about that was you eat 3 times a day. And if they're controlling what's on your plate every time, that is a lot of touch points every day, even if that were the only ones where you're checking in with the imaginary big guy,
So and this is it was called the Worldwide Church of God, I think. Is that right? I don't know what it's called now. It seems that it's changed through the years a little bit.
Yeah, I can run through the backstory actually here.
Sure.
Herbert W. Armstrong, he was a boy growing up the turn of the century. His family background is Quaker, from what I understand, but he wasn't really that religious of a person. He did marry some distant cousin of his, and she was in a very religious household. And so they had moved across the country from Iowa to close to Portland, of all places. Yes, that's where everything kicked off, is where you live now. But his wife got involved with, it was either Seventh-day Adventists or it was a group of religious people that held the Sabbath on Saturday. The whole Old Testament, sundown to sundown, Friday night to Saturday night. Well, his wife was really into this. She started to wholeheartedly believe, there's something different about this church. And then she told her husband about it. And eventually, I guess he just got to the point where he was either convinced, maybe he was convinced at the time, or it was an opportunity that he wanted to snatch up as a way for power. See, he was a failed businessman. He was in marketing before that. Yes. Marketing.
Wow.
It was the perfect setup for one of these mega churches pastors that we see today, but he was an early pioneer of that. So he didn't have the television early on, but he had the radio. And so he started, it was originally named the Radio Church of God. So he started preaching to people and reaching out because he knew advertising, he knew marketing, he knew how to sell things. That was his job. He failed in business, but he went, for the Bible because it was the work of somebody else and he saw an opportunity to make bank on it. Well, he stuck with all the whole Old Testament, very Leviticus based. Like I was saying, you control what a person eats, what they wear. Everyone looked very professional. Women had to wear dresses. I don't think that ever changed, did it, Pat? Didn't women have to always?
Oh, we didn't have to. We could wear pants.
Oh, we could wear pants. Okay.
Not to church. You're right. Not to church.
That's what I'm saying. To church.
Definitely dresses and suits for the men. And
okay.
briefcases. That business look was like a
1975.
big deal.
It was very corporate-y, very business. And yeah, I think that really appealed to Armstrong. But yeah, long story short, he was very successful at what he did. And this was something different that people weren't hearing. It was like people often describe it as he's holding, the newspaper or magazine in one hand and you're holding the Bible in the other. And he's getting all these he's giving all these prophecies saying, see, this is what's going on. I have a passage here in the Bible that I can reference to say this going on in the world is why this is happening.
Oh, right.
To convince people. He was very charming and convincing to people. They looked
Can I
up.
jump in there, Nance?
Yeah, go for it.
So I have thought a lot about what he did with that magazine and what he did with the World Tomorrow public access TV show that he did. And he was so good at looking at the real things, like nuclear bombs exist. And yeah, actually, as humans on this planet, that should scare us. That is scary, right? So he realizes these things are actually scary. And then he's doing exactly what Nancy's saying, is he's taking these very real, very fear-inducing real things and then trying to say it's the Bible and also I'm the completion of that story.
Wow.
Right. So it's so genius because you're not making something up. You're not making up a devil. You're not making up whatever kind of bad guy.
Wow.
You're showing things that are actually real and scary and people should be scared of.
Hijacking it.
Using it.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Mm,
Sorry.
Thanks
Go
for
on.
that. Yeah.
No, I get really into the details of the story, but I mean, this man did live through 2 world wars too, so you got to imagine where his mind is at in the Great Depression. He was giving free literature away for his organization during the Great Depression. Of course, people were eating that shit up. Sorry,
No, they were probably using it for toilet paper, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, you got me there. But yes, and so that just added to people's trust in him, and people just needed to listen to someone during this time. And it's like he had all of the answers. He reassured people during a time of so much pain and uncertainty. That motherfucker. Oh my gosh! But it went on from there. I mean, obviously, Patty and I were in it in the 80s. We grew up in the Worldwide Church. We've got a lot had changed by that point. But
so it had grown and shrunk and grown again through the years.
Just grew. It just grew.
Okay.
I can jump in here if you want, Nance.
Yeah. Sure. How many at its height, Pets?
Well, they were up over 100,000. I think there was some sense that they were seeking to be that 144,000 that the Bible talked about. They're like, no, see, it's us. Look how close our numbers are.
Yeah.
So that was the game they were playing. But a lot of the shifting happened throughout the 70s, because I believe it was the early 70s that Garner Ted Armstrong, who was the son of Herbert W., and at that point looked like he was all systems go to take over the empire. He was the face of the World Tomorrow TV show. And then the sex scandals came out. Garner Ted was out.
Oh, I didn't know about that. Okay.
Oh, a lot. He
Big
was
sex scandals.
getting caught sleeping with us students like galore. He was a good-looking kid, too. Also very charming. Nobody wanted to see Armstrong anymore. They wanted to see his son.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Well,
and then they showed him the door.
Yep.
Yes. And old Brinkley guy took over again. Okay. So, okay. But there was a whole thing going on, right? Because it was looking very modern with the son. Well, and then the son was on the outs. So he goes and starts, an offshoot. But then Armstrong is back in it. And he's jumping on with whatever the JWs were saying at the time, that the world's going to end in 1975. And so everyone was focused on that. And then I guess that didn't happen.
Splash, now we're still here. That's right.
Yeah.
Hence his book, 1975 in Prophecy, that you can still find.
Yep.
Wow.
So then Armstrong, again, being the marketing genius, realized the world was different. And his whole, God put the electness on the white English speakers thing probably wasn't going to work anymore, especially in California where the church was. So they became a very internationally focused philanthropic organization at that point.
Yes.
Good job, right? And
It's like the Moonies.
I know.
The Moonies did that. Wow. Okay.
But
Now-
so this is the environment that Nancy and I are coming into. It still has all the control of food and Old Testament, all of that going on. But they're also talking about we're starting schools in other countries. We're having the Chinese kids come here and do choir singing with our kids. And so I'm seeing this very globally educated, like, interest in other cultures thing happening, but it was marketing. But I bought it. And am who I am now. Like, I think I am the activist I am because of Herbert W. Armstrong and that shift. So I'll take
Wow.
the good that came out of that for me, while
Mhm.
recognizing the harm that all of the control pieces of his cult still gave me. You know?
So you were born into it. By the time you guys came along, your parents were, pardon me, in the church. They were married, and this was their belief system. Had they been raised in Christian homes before they stumbled into the cult, your folks?
Kind of.
Our father was.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It kind of is for
Mhm.
both. Yeah. But they both had a lot of traumas growing up, both lost parents. I mean, that's a whole nother story, which you know more about, Pats. if you
I
wanna
do.
go
I
there.
do.
There's
Sure.
reasons they were vulnerable to Armstrong's message. Yeah.
Yes.
The
I agree with that.
vulnerability. Yeah. And that's who
Yes.
joins religions, cults, conspiracy theories, vulnerable people. And the truth is we're all vulnerable at some point, whether we're indoctrinated in childhood or whether we're young adults and we're not sure who we are yet. Our identity is still forming. Maybe we're away at university or college for the first time. Maybe we've lost a partner or lost a job. We're all vulnerable at some point. So you were raised in it, and you had also other siblings, younger siblings too. And so at what point did you end up stepping away from it or recognizing it was not all that it was cracked up to be? When did that
Sure.
happen? And did you go to a religious school? Like, was there a Herbert Armstrong school?
Oh, okay.
Oh.
All right. I can go there. So when I was 5 years old and I was in my first day of kindergarten outfit on my way to public school, because they did not have elementary schools in our church, my mom looked at me and said, "What a cute little college girl I looked like." I was 5. And I would be ready someday to go to Ambassador College, which was our cult's college.
Wow.
So there was an assumption there. However, by the time, I was about 16, 15, 16, Nancy was 2 years behind me. Our cult leader had died several years before, and there had been we were on the second pastor general since him. And he made the decision to completely change the doctrine of the church. So all the things that made it culty went away, and they were just going to be like, hey, we're just a New Testament non-denominational church now. And all the people who'd been in this cult for 50 years, their whole life, were like, what? You mean I missed Christmas with my family for all these years for nothing? It doesn't make me special. It doesn't mean Jesus is going to come take me. It was a little rough.
Shocking.
This was so impactful, Janice, because people thought we're something special. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, but everyone gets in just by loving Jesus? What?
Yeah, we got it wrong. How could that be?
So as the church is kind of falling away from us, right? Because it's changing. People are hemorrhaging out the church. They're moving to smaller and smaller locations. As all of that's happening, our dad gets a job 2 hours away from home. So he's got a flop he stays at, that's what he called it, during the week. And wouldn't you know it, he found God's end time prophet on the shortwave radio while he was staying there.
How convenient.
Just in case you were wondering how you find that, that's apparently how.
I actually asked him, how did you find out about this? Oh, I just looked him online and there he was. Like that was his response.
God works in mysterious ways.
And it wasn't, this prophet wasn't related to the Armstrong group or anything.
Not at
No,
all. But by this point, a lot of the offshoots were still, there were a couple offshoots by this point because the church was just going through so many problems. And so a lot of these men, of course, they're men that were in like the upper echelons of like Armstrong's organization, they were all kissing his ass to see what biggest piece of the pie they could get, right? When they realized they weren't going to win, they started their own churches, but they continued on with Armstrongism, right? That's kind of what we collectively call it now. So there were a couple by this point, but there weren't many. And so they had to get established. And so members that broke away from the church, which was like as many as half, some people wanted to stick with the old ways. They're like, no, this is them trying to take over. It's the devil trying to take over. We need to go find the truth. And they're like, where do we go? A man named Brother Ralph Stair, he went by Brother Stair, over in Walterboro, South Carolina. He was the answer for our father. In fact, somehow he was able to pull in a lot of people that were in Armstrongism into his.
That's the shortwave radio guy.
Yeah, that's the shortwave radio guy that Patti is talking about. And so when I was just a few months away from graduating high school, my father just made the decision for the family that we were all going to move to South Carolina, and my wonderful sister here fought to keep me here while the family split apart.
Because I was in college and they weren't paying for college at all. So I was like out. I was like, well, I guess I moved out then.
Yeah. You're like, fuck it. I don't want anything else to do.
No, I was ready to see them go. But yes, they were going to take Nancy, and she was a senior in high school. And I was like, don't you dare. So, but it was a little rough for you, Nancy, after that. And really? I had my period of time of not going to church for a couple of years until I got sucked into a college campus ministry. And then I was an evangelical for 10 years. But yeah, it went different for Nancy.
Well, I was on my own at 17. Like just I lived in more places than I can count. I call those my dark years, which I haven't even really talked about. They were just from like 17 on to late 20s or so. But what happened for me was I was thrown into this world like without my parents. You know, they're off doing their things. And in fact, the church, which we'll get into him a little bit more later, at one point, this motherfucker decided to say, call us the whores of Satan, something like that, and that they were not to have any contact with us. And
Brother Stair said this?
Yeah.
Brother Stair said that?
Oh, he was a pedophile as well. He would.
Oh, no.
The young women, like, we were so concerned because things were coming out in the news. I mean, Armstrong was supposedly as well. There were rumors about him and his daughter.
Like part of the archetype. I don't understand.
It's an archetype. And then it's so disgusting. But yeah, all kinds of a scandal there as well. But I was thrown into a world that I was taught to fear, really be afraid of, and I was taught to like just hate the people in it. Like somehow I was worth nothing, but yet I was also elect. I was like this special person of God's chosen people, better than people. Mm-hmm. Now, I would say I, for the most part, never believed in any of this. I tried very hard to believe in a God and be a good girl, but eventually I just have a free spirited mind like you, Janice. I wanted to go travel. I wanted to be free. I wanted to have sex with whoever I wanted to. I wanted to do what I wanted to without judgment. I couldn't do it. So I just shut down as a child. I really had no friends, no social life to speak of. It didn't matter because if I did anything, I would just get, the silent treatment and grounded or spanked as young children. Of course, we got beaten as kids for whatever the hell wrong we did that we weren't trying to do. But it was very rough for me for a long time. I'm glad that Patti had the college to fall back on, but I did join the military mainly because I just couldn't navigate this world. I needed some sort of a family structure. I needed someone to tell me what to do because I just felt like I couldn't do it. I was not doing a job.
So how long were you in the military?
10 years. Just got out a few years ago. Yeah.
That's a long time. Good memories, bad memories, mixture of both in the military. I mean, it provides structure, like you're talking about, and purpose.
Provided structure, but it still very much is like, oh, we're an army of one. We're gonna break you down and build you back up.
Yeah, it's
In
like
the
a cult.
military, which is the exact same way as a cult, and so no wonder it appealed to me. But I'm not saying I regret it. I feel very proud of what I did. I got to accomplish things I don't think I ever would have before, but that was a fun aspect. I did deploy to Iraq in 08, 09, and that was an interesting experience. I have a love for the world, and that's where my love for travel and other cultures kicked off. So in a way, I'm glad I went through that experience. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Wow. Okay. And so, so you didn't really believe, Nancy. Patti, did you believe when you were growing up, when your parents were saying, this is the way, this is the only way? Did you believe it?
As far as I can tell, I did. I mean, I think there's probably a lot of self-deception going on in all of that to believe that you believe when if you don't believe, you're dead.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Right. So yes.
What choice do you have?
Right. Like as far
as
as I knew, to my own head, I believed.
Yeah. When
to
did
the
you
point
start
that-
questioning? Oh, sorry. Go
Oh,
on.
yeah, no, that's okay. So early on, like obviously, when you're a tiny child and they tell you this is real, you don't have any way to see outside of that. So I know my parents were very proud of me for a long time because I was 2 years old and proselytizing to someone in a laundromat.
Yes.
So,
so
yeah, so
embarrassing.
believe, yes. I would say though, my parents' fatal flaw in indoctrinating me was sending me to public school. I think that they somehow had the sense that public school was going to be the same thing they experienced in the 1950s. And let me tell you, in 1980s Silicon Valley, California, no, it was not. It was incredibly liberal and incredibly culturally aware and environmentally aware. And so that combined with, Chinese kids choirs coming to our church, I grew up with a totally different worldview, even though I had to believe in God the way they did.
Yeah.
So that was California. We saw the cult in California, which I think was probably, we saw the wealthier side of what the cult looked like.
Yeah.
And then our dad's job in California went away and he got a severance package. So he wanted to move back to Wisconsin where he grew up. So when I was 13, Nancy was 11, we moved to Wisconsin and got to experience what the Worldwide Church of God looked like in small town rural environments. And it was very different. The people were definitely more in a hard scrabble kind of place, living very much impoverished to keep up with the church's tithing and things like that. Because it was the whole game in the church was we'll give you literature for free. And once you're in, we have a system of 3 tithes and special offerings. So a very committed family could expect to part with 30% of their gross income each year to keep the church going. Yeah, I mean, very, very destructive because what they're telling you is the world's going to end. So you don't need retirement. You don't need college funds for your kids, right? So that's the stuff they're taking, which has a generational effect. Imagine that. So anyway.
I just wanted to add real quick that he convinced widows, at least for quite a while, to part with their property, any assets they had before they died. Because again, the children don't need it because if the world's going to end, they're like, but the church needs it. And so it's easy to see how this man amassed the wealth that he did and ended up with 2 private jets and giving Stube and Crystal to monarchs around the world as bribes, essentially.
This was Herbert Armstrong, like the guy who founded it.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So lots of grifting was going on there.
Much. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So then I'm 17, 18 in Wisconsin. I'm finishing college. I'm figuring out going to a state college because apparently I get to. Didn't end. Surprise. I think by this point, the church is becoming a little bit more non-denominational. So they're letting go of some of the hardline stuff. I'm of an age of wanting to do my own thing, right? Like I'm very much like, I need independence, you know? So I would say, well, okay, the thing that got me out of the church was another church.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I find that I'm certainly not the only one out of our cult that has found their way into like an evangelical situation. It
Mhm.
lasted 10 years for me. Started in high school. I made a friend at the gas station I was working at. Okay, it was just all of it was a boy. It was all because I liked boys, Janice. Every single time.
Yeah.
Every single
Boys
time.
are trouble.
Well, yes. In college, I had a
Penis
friend who would say,
problems.
boys are dumb. Throw rocks at them. Don't actually do that, though. So, so there's a guy that I'm working with. He invites me to his church. And he tells me where it is. And it was one of the places that our cult had held services because they always rented spaces. And I was like, it's a sign. And so I went to church. Oh, the layers of superstition we work through. So I went to church there for a while. It was very evangelical, very like, I'm so happy, feeling snappy, you know, that
Yeah. I
genre.
know that song.
Yeah.
Oh, I loved that shit. It was great.
My life is rosy.
I'm feeling comfy, cozy.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes. So,
Wow.
but you know what? That was an energy that I really needed at that point. It was
Sure.
sucky that it came through a church situation. So the guy that I followed there,
Oh, yeah. So you're
yeah,
just to remind
Yes.
our audience, you're coming out of a doomsday, like literal. The world is ending. Things are terrible. Things are only going to get worse. And then you go into this bright ray of sunshine. Everything's coming up roses. Jesus loves you. You know, we
Yes.
love you. So of course that would seem like a huge, huge difference emotionally.
Yes. Oh, yes, for sure. And I gave my heart to Jesus because I thought it would
Mhm.
make Bill think I was great. It didn't, because I'm pretty sure
Oh.
Bill was gay. I hope he's worked that out now for himself.
Oh.
But yeah. So I stayed on long enough, even though it didn't work out with Bill. I stayed long enough to find another boyfriend there. And that lasted a couple of years into when I started college. So that relationship lasted over the, ending of high school, starting of college. And during that same time is when our folks moved to South Carolina for Brother Stare. So this was like everything fell away from me. The church fell away from me. My parents fell away from me. I'm in college and like, well, okay, here we go. And even then I had the realization, like, no one talked to me about what life should look like after college. Like everything about my childhood at school and at home was like college, 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 right? Because we had our family didn't have that many people who had gone to college. It was kind of a new thing. We were like, peasantry, farming families.
But they wanted you to go to the ambassador or the religious cult college, but you actually were going to not a cult college. You were going to a public state college, or?
Yes, because our cult college was gonzo by then. Everything had fallen apart. The college had closed. So I had no chance to go to it. We actually interviewed a woman who was there for her freshman year, like the last year it was in operation, or the last couple of years it was in operation. Sounds like a shit show. So I'm glad I didn't go. But yeah, I didn't really have that option. And I had worked since I was 14, washing dishes and then all kinds of, after school jobs. And it was really disheartening then to pay for my first semester of college and be like, oh, well, there was everything I earned in high school.
Wow.
Because my parents didn't have money to send me to college. So I worked my way through college. About halfway through, got very pulled into Chi Alpha, which is the Assemblies of God college campus ministry.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Yeah. Again, it was a boy because the leader of it was so darn cute and paid me special attention.
Patty's problems always originate back to penis.
So anyway, so there I am. Going to Chi Alpha, which also then looped me into a local church in the town that I was going to college in. So from there, fully getting indoctrinated into evangelicalism, it made sense to me in some ways. And I remember telling somebody, because I did have non-Christian friends, and they were asking me about my faith once. And I remember saying, the fact that I'd gone through the Doomsday cult and all the shit that I went through because of religion, and the fact that I still believed was proof to myself that it was real. Like, what is that? I feel like there's a word for that. But yeah, so I mean, the things we go through to try to stay safe, right? I'm convinced that's what I was doing the whole time, is I was looking for the community that told me I was safe, safe in the here and now, safe in, if that thing after death happens. That's what it was all about. It was all lizard brain stuff. Safety.
Around the same time, so Patty's going through all this trying to find her safe place. I think me at the time, I didn't think there was a safe place. So I was just trying to drown out how I felt. Ooh. I didn't want to feel anything. So I drank, I dabbled in drugs, was very promiscuous. I was homeless a couple of times. Life was not pretty. But eventually, Patti and I sort of lined up, and you got me out of that situation, Pats, because all of a sudden you, you weren't away from evangelicalism yet, right? So I'll let you continue on in your story, but eventually,
please.
Our timelines kind of snap back together.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm in college right now, so you can talk about the late night pick you up.
Oh, well, long story short, I was in a situation with somebody I was dating at the time, and I literally held a knife in my hand. Patti came in the middle of the night and got me out of there.
Wow, scary.
And so then I feel like, is that like I joined you in college, Pats, because you got me out of the ultimate dangerous situation. By that point, you're like, fuck this. I'm going to help my little sister.
Yeah, I brought a friend, and then our cousin met me there, and we parked outside the house you were at, and we were like, we're not leaving till you come with us. And you did. And then I think I had you in my dorm room sort of illegally for 2 weeks. And then,
but you know what I thought was funny? The dude I was with at the time, Jason, which is kind of funny. My first boyfriend was Jason, so maybe that's why I named one of the characters in my book Jason. No, that just connected for me. But anyway, you were so upset with him, and you were Christian at the time, and you told him, you know what you need to do? You need to pick up a Bible. And then you let as if that was like you got him.
That's so embarrassing. That is so embarrassing.
You were still so Christian at the time. But no, I get your sentiment.
Yeah. I mean, you needed something.
And this was before you, Nancy, joined the army. Then.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That was after rescue number 2. Right?
There were a couple of times that you bailed my ass. I don't know. I don't know what I would have done without my sister over here, Janice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well done. Oh, you guys are so sweet.
We were synced with that one.
You got my,
that's awesome.
I don't know what I was doing. It was bad.
Well, I'm wondering then, Patti, at what point, so you're in college, but now you're also in a college Christian cult, evangelical, Pentecostal, whatever it is. Yes. And so then what happened? Did you finish your degree? Did you end up dropping out? What happened?
Okay, I did finish my degree. I got myself a degree in interior architecture, and I moved my ass up to Minneapolis because I didn't want to stay in Wisconsin and design with deer heads. So I thought, here's the next big city I can get to. That's where I got to. And I worked for an architectural firm for a little while. Then I worked for Target corporate, doing store planning. So yeah, I did the damn thing with my degree, which was great.
Yay, cool.
I got up to Minneapolis, got into my new job, still Christian as heck. And even though we started at Target and I was still a Christian. That's weird to think about. So during this time, while I'm working in Minneapolis as a young single person, I, of course, looped myself into a church because someone I knew from my church in Wisconsin had a church or was going to church in Minneapolis and invited me. So I went, and it was fine for me at the time. They had less of the out loud speaking in tongues and interpretations, which I was at that point kind of like, not into that. So I was glad for that. It was very like, people living in McMansions get to show up and do their 2 hours and go home and be like, yay, I did it. That kind of place. It was fine.
Okay.
Fine.
Okay.
I met my husband there.
The church?
At this evangelical church.
Mm.
We were the goodest kids ever, Janice. We were both like, okay, and all this time I had not had sex.
Wow.
I had a boyfriend for a couple of years, and let me tell you, there was a lot of things going on, but
Loopholes.
you gotta you protect that one spot that apparently God cares about. Anyway,
The one hole is the exception.
yeah. So that was boyfriends in
The
college.
holy
and
of
stuff.
holies.
The holy of holies. Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So then, all right. So I bought myself a little house, which was at that point when the markets made it so you could buy a house without anything
Right.
down, which could have been a very
Wow.
stupid move for me. Let me tell you,
Wow.
I ate ramen for a while to make it work, but I did it. Had this little tiny rundown house. I had this house in Minneapolis. I'm going to this church, and then I meet my husband. He's a few years older than me. His parents had just moved to town, and they were very pushy. They really wanted their oldest son to to get married, which is fine. We've been married for 20 years. Great guy. It's all worked out well.
Nice.
Yep.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I lucked out, honestly, but we didn't even kiss before we got married. And our first kiss was on the altar, and it was incredibly awkward. We bumped noses. We managed to figure out the rest, and it's fine. And I have had another partner since then with a little open marriage-ness stuff.
Mhm.
And that was more of a recognition of the kind of life that I led and how I was kind of boxed in as a young person. And my very kind and wonderful husband gave me that freedom and gave me that autonomy and was cool with that. So
Wow.
really beautiful experience, to be honest.
Yeah. So when you got married, did your parents come to the wedding, or were they like, by that time you weren't really talking anymore?
So I think they would have, except when I wanted to get married turned out to be during their big Feast of Tabernacles autumn festival thing. And I didn't know when it was. It's like based on some Hebrew calendar or something. So because it was during that time, they were like, we can't come, but why don't you change it? And like, no, I'm not going to start my marriage, my life, my family by your rules. I'm just not. And so, no, they weren't there.
Wow.
And my brother and my grandmother were the like giving me away thing, even though I would never do the give me away thing again these days.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then at some point you walked away from the McMansion church too.
Yes, I know. I'm probably rude calling it that, to be honest. Not everyone there was moderately wealthy, but I did. So the thing that got me out of there, while married to a Christian guy, was when we started talking about having kids. And I started thinking, because we were married for 4 or 5 years before we had kids. I started thinking about what that looks like. I want to take my baby with me places. And then I had this vision of putting my babies in the nursery and the children's church stuff. And I was like, I can't lie to my kids like that. And it was like, wait a second. I would be lying to them. And I was like, wait, I don't think I believe it. It wasn't maybe that dramatic, but it was like the whole thing was all like feelings in my body. This question of how do you think? I think in feelings in my body, and it takes me a lot longer to make it a real thought or real words,
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was it. The fact that I couldn't indoctrinate someone else.
So did you tell your husband that? Were you like, I don't think I believe this anymore?
Not directly. At first, at least. I think I started more with like concerns about the way things were happening in the church that I was kind of like feeling meh about, or like it wasn't really helpful to people. So I think I started there. I also started working that Target job, and I was like, there are way too many correlations between the corporate world and how this church runs. And that was another like undoing of things for me. So we started skipping church. I think it was like we just kind of had one mind about it. And at one point I was on the computer upstairs, back in the days when we didn't all have 5 of our own computers. And I was realizing, oh, he's listening to Joseph Campbell. So he was like diving all the way into hero's journey and this recognition of how the Jesus story is just this kind of same story that's been told over and over. And it's like an archetype thing. So that was like, oh, we're in the same spot. And so then we did talk about it. I don't think it was that awkward. I don't really remember the conversation. But from that point, we kind of stopped going to things, and we said we weren't going to help because he did sound work. I did decorating on the stage. Like we were involved, like we were part of it. So we stepped away from that first and then stopped going. And when it became clear that our decision had been made, we got nasty talks from his family.
Really nasty.
And then invited out to eat with the pastor and his wife, during which they talked to us about stuff. And when they had a similar time of questioning or whatever, and I'm like, yeah, but then you stayed with it because that was your whole livelihood. I'm sorry, but that's the truth.
Good for you. Yeah.
So.
Wow. Well, did you have kids at that time?
Yes. So so it was like we had kind of backed away from going, and we're already backed away when I got pregnant.
Okay.
So we were
so the kids didn't grow up going to church.
Not 0.0%. Wow. I was so proud. Let me tell you how proud I was when we were driving through our city, and my little toddler in the back is like, "Hey, mommy, what's that building with a T on top?"
Oh, they must love tea.
Says trust us.
Yes. Well done, you. That is very good. You know that you have been successful in not indoctrinating your child into Christianity.
At least not Christianity.
Yes.
Well, I'll tell you though, I think that because of the early indoctrination, even non-Christian things that have sort of a culty flavor sucked me in for a long time. And I hope now I'm past it, but I have cited this traditional foods group that I got to be a part of for a while, which was way cool. I loved it. All the fermenting and, nose to tail, whatever, everything. It was so cool.
Crunchy mom.
Sounds a little trad wifey.
Oh, we need to go into trad wife stuff, Nancy and I, because I was. Without the Christian part, I was.
Yes.
But I enjoyed that time. I enjoyed the time of being really connected to the land that I was gardening in and stuff like that. And I loved the trad food things as like a historical study. But when they started getting weird about, I wouldn't feed my kids something like,
right.
And then I was like, oh, we're in that like culty here. Get yourself in the box.
Fundamentalist. Game. Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
and we have to start limiting what we can do. It's a bite model all over again. And then even potentially putting limits on our self-love. Like, can we really, if we do that, are we even really worthy of loving ourselves if we are not vegan, or if whatever the thing is? Because people take anything to extremes. And those of us who grew up in fundamentalist, culty type families, we are forever in search of the elusive middle. We're grabbed over to one extreme or the other because that's what we were primed for. That's what feels comfortable.
The middle feels boring as heck. I'm like, give me some something.
Like if we aren't extremist in some area, it's like we're not doing enough. We could get addicted to literally anything. And that was food for you for a while, Pats. In fact, oh my God, was she a pain sometimes. I'm sorry. So during this time, to pick up my timeline, I did actually live with Patti for a while. I moved up to Minneapolis because life was not working out for me. I needed some.
It was rescue number 2.
It was rescue number 2, and I don't know what
Okay.
rescue number 2 was about, but
All I know is I brought my pickup truck full of your stuff home in a snowstorm.
okay, so it must have
Oh.
been bad. I don't need to remember those times, but the fact that you were there for me. So I am now in Minneapolis with Patti. This is like early 2000s. And at that point, see, I was 23 years old when I joined the military. So it wasn't that long when I moved up there in with Patti that I started not only a career in the military, but I started my civilian career because I was mostly National Guard. I have been activated for 3 years. But so I had the military career. I had civilian career when I started out in managing hotels, and then I slowly transitioned into HR. And I was also going to school. So I was pursuing my degree in hospitality and business management. And then I got my master's in human resources. And so my career spanned 15 years in HR. Yes, Patti.
This is like when you're talking about when you're first military and doing this HR stuff, that's when you were living with me right after I got married, right?
That's
Like
when
right
it's all
before-
kicked off.
Right
Yeah.
before and right after I got married. Yeah. Okay. Just
Yeah.
setting the
So
timeline.
like this is what's going on with me as Patti is going through her, getting away from evangelicalism phase and crunchy mom phase and dealing with her mother-in-law. Ooh, that was a lot to deal with for her. But yes, I was still trying to find my own way in the world. And so I just stuck it into working my ass off, right? Between school, military, and a civilian career. And so I had deployed. Actually, I had gotten back from Iraq when you were pregnant with your first child, Pets. That's the timeline there. At that point, I was.
You told me,
go ahead.
hang on, I gotta say this. You told me I wasn't allowed to have a baby while you were gone. And so
Okay.
you came back, you got off the bus and touched my big old belly that was 3 weeks away from baby coming. Yeah.
Oh, that's so sweet.
I
After being
delivered
years
for
overseas,
you.
yeah. Awesome. That's very sweet. Yes. It's funny that the things that we remember as we talk about it. Let's see. No, where was I? Yeah, I this is the period of my life when Patti describes as the most floaty, Janice. I was very floaty and just like in between military assignments at that point because I didn't have an apartment to go back to after I had deployed. I came home and I'm like, well, why don't I start up a new career? They will hold your job for you if you deploy overseas, but I just didn't want to go that route. I wanted to start something new. And so around that time period, an old friend from college, acquaintance, whoever, I had barely spoken to her, but all of a sudden she reaches out to me. I'm like, oh, okay.
The MLM story.
This is the MLM story. You knew exactly where I was going with this. If you hear from someone that you like barely spoke to before and they're all chipper and cheery, how are you? What's been going on in your life?
God.
Flag. And I was still vulnerable to this message somehow at the time. I still did not have my own frame of mind, I think. And so
MLMs.
holy
They're
shit.
terrible.
And Amway of all ones. Yes. She invited me out
The
for
mother
coffee.
of
I'm like,
all.
I know it's like the Mac Daddy of MLM. So that's multi-level marketing. I'm sure everyone's familiar with it, but yeah, people can go look up stats. Well, guess what? I was terrible at that also because I felt like I was just duping people, lying people. I feel like I was being Herbert W. Armstrong, trying to get them to buy dumb shit that I didn't even enjoy myself. Why?
They needed to fill their garage. They had to fill their garage with Amways.
But okay, so I had gotten into this, not that I really wanted to. I just didn't feel strong enough to say, hey, I'm really not interested in this. But
Yes.
nothing else was going in my life other than just me working my ass off. I needed to do something new. So yeah, that's the fourth thing I added. Why not just become an independent business owner in Amway now too? Great.
I'm sorry.
and
I'm
now-
sorry. I keep meaning to
I know
say
what you're
this
going to
thing.
say. Go ahead.
The independent business owner thing. I'm like, no. That is 3 lies in one, just like an MRE. You're not independent. It's not really a business and you don't own shit. And it looks like an MRE, meals ready to eat. No, 3 lies in one. Okay. You're welcome.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. All right.
If you're familiar with those, that's food that's processed and ready to go in the military, Janice.
Okay. Thank
If
you.
you've never tried one, just the name, meal ready to eat.
Yeah.
You could like burn it in oil and it would still exist. Yeah.
Wow.
The independent business owner thing just makes me so angry because they use
Yeah.
that to control people and give them fake
Yeah.
empowerment. It just
They're selling a lie. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Oh, the whole thing was a lie. The whole thing was extremely culty. We know how MLMs work. But I got into this and then by extension, also got involved with an evangelical mega church. Like one of these in Minneapolis, in the Minneapolis area that is televised, worth
Oh yeah.
billions. Like even they
Yeah.
even built a useless hallway around the entire property that was $1 million.
Mhm.
Oh my God. Like hands up in the air, praise Jesus, talking in tongues, all of that type of stuff. It
And
was
were you believing it?
no.
Did you believe it? Oh.
I often tell people that I've never set foot in a church willingly because I've never wanted to be there unless that church has been turned into like some nightclub or brewery or winery
Sure.
or something like that. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? But no, I went because I had a very narcissistic, toxic friend, the same friend that got me involved in that. And since I was in my floaty period at the time, I became roommates with her. And so it was that much easier for her to control my every move. I didn't realize at this point in my life and at that age, I was still vulnerable to this shit, but I was. I can actually admit it now without getting really upset about it. But that was a horrible friendship because it wasn't a friendship at all.
How long did it last?
It was only a few years, I'd say, maybe 3. It wasn't like a 10-year stint like Patti, because I was busy, navigating the military career, and also I'm still trying to get my degrees at this point too. So I had a lot going on. But then I had no spare time because now I had this faux friend of mine dragging me to MLN conferences out of guilt
My
and going
God.
to church because I knew she would use toxic language against me and make me like guilt and shame me if I didn't. And so again, I still was not into religion, Christianity, believing in God, all of that. And I really did try. This time was maybe a little bit closer than the Doomsday cult because I was like, well, maybe God isn't this monster that I was raised to believe he was.
Right.
Maybe he is this beautiful Jesus, rainbows out your asshole Jesus that we get taught, that evangelicals learn when they're kids and oh, he's here for the children, the extremely G-rated version. But even then, I just wasn't into it. I loved the world. I loved people. I loved cultures. I was such a humanist and I didn't even realize it because I've only ever known like toxic people who have tried to control me in my life. And so eventually I managed to break free of that because while I was overseas deployed, this woman stole from me, financially. So that was quite the big mess, but it was sort of a wake-up call for me too. That was yet another situation where my sister pulled me out. I'm like, I'm getting you out of here. And I think I went to live right across the street from you, Pets, or maybe around that time period. It was great living in Minneapolis, so close to my sister, and we really bonded during that time. Got to know each other better because it just felt like we had never had quite the closeness that we do now.
And was Patti still in church at that time?
No, you were transitioning out because when I was in the MLM and evangelical church, she started just snubbing everything I did. She saw the toxicity, she saw the control, and I hadn't really seen it yet. I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
And so, eventually she pulled me out of that too. But
I already had bad feelings about MLMs by this point because in my church years, I'd been guilted into enough $45 purchases for crap that I didn't want that I was like, you're doing what?
I knew nothing of them by this point. So obviously I was the prime target. And then back, I realized she wasn't the first person to actually approach me about an MLM. I feel like mid 2000s, it was really popular to be an MLM, especially like Amway. But yeah, I was horrible at that too. I was horrible at that too.
Well, you're not the only one. Very few people actually make any money out of them. That's why it's such a racket.
I think you've got to be a pretty big manipulator to be good at that.
You sure do. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You should see the dude in charge of that team. holy God, he's an asshole.
Mhm.
Oh, everyone's
Mhm.
just singing his praises, and I'm over here like, the dude is a fucking narcissistic, misogynistic prick, and you guys don't see this? He
Oh,
used all
yeah.
the same tactics that we've been seeing. So you think I would have learned by this point, but that was just another hard lesson I had to learn in my life.
Right, right. So then what happened? Patty has helped you out. You're starting to see reality as it is. And then what?
Well, I was still in the military, and then Patty, what year was it when you moved away to Portland? Because eventually you went
Until
off and you were just
2015.
yeah,
10 years ago.
2015 was the year that I got out of the military, actually. And that was also the year after I met my husband. So I met my current husband here in college, the college I was going to at the time. And so I got married to him like right after I got out of the military. And thus the next chapter of my life began. And then Patty moved away to Portland to begin her new chapter. So,
But I flew back to be your wedding officiant.
yes, you were. I appreciate
So I'm
it.
ordained. I'm
Secular.
ordained also. Yes.
Yeah.
How are you ordained? Like not through a church?
No, well, it is a church technically. It's the Something Life Church. And it's an online thing where you just like
Well, I
pay
get it.
$50 and you get to be
Yeah.
ordained in their church.
And you
That's
can
funny.
marry
You did that
people.
just to get me
Nice.
married. Yeah.
Oh, I like it. So then, Nancy, are you still in Minneapolis?
Nope. So I moved. Well, after I got married, I moved down to Madison, Wisconsin, which is actually where my husband was living at the time. We met in college, and he was driving back and forth while I was just starting my master's degree. He was just finishing his, and we crossed paths. We got married a year later because we're both like, we both know what we want, right? At this point, right? I had never been married, never really had long-term relationships. I mean, I knew what I was looking for. And so like early 30s, we just got married, and then he wanted to open up a restaurant. And so we moved down to Madison, or I moved down to Madison after my degree was finished, and we opened up a restaurant for a few years. It was an Indian fusion place, and got
Wow.
the experience of owning a restaurant. Yes.
Yeah, it's hard work.
Oh,
Yeah.
I would never do.
I was the designer. I designed their restaurant.
Oh,
It looks great,
beautiful.
guys. Yeah.
Gosh. Wow.
It was
But
so
I
fun,
think
Nancy.
with him, I found like kind of the family and support that I was looking for, because I was really into travel. I was really into cultures. And my husband, he is so ambitious. We both work from home now. And we just spend a lot of our time traveling around the world, because that was my dream and he was on board for that. And when we
Cool.
like on our first date, I told him I wanted 3 things that, I think everyone should have like deal breakers when they're dating. And I said, I always wanted someone who was, well, first of all, secular. I hadn't really explored my atheist side at that point. I just knew I didn't want anything to do with any of that. I'm like, I don't want him to be religious by any means, not have children, because I've never wanted them and never will. And I wanted him to have a passion for travel, like world travel. And so I'm like, okay. We continued from that point, and a year later we were married.
Well, cool. And so, I mean, at some point, both of you have opened up to your spouses about, okay, this is the family I grew up in, and actually, I grew up in being involved in a cult, and especially Nancy, if your husband was never religious, this is a lot for him to understand and learn about. Wow.
Right. He doesn't quite understand my drive to like speak. He's just like, oh, you don't believe in this, so why even bother talking about it? I
Wow.
don't know if he's really going to grasp that,
Mhm.
because I mean, his parents are Hindu, but they're pretty devout Hindu, but at the same time, like, they don't proselytize. They don't.
It's very different.
It feels different. I've been to India
Mhm.
3 times now, and the only time someone proselytized to me was a Christian that was over there. An Indian
Yes,
that
exactly.
was Christian. Like, Hindus
So
don't bother
annoying.
me. Muslims don't bother me. And so
Mm.
I was perfectly fine with that.
Yeah, and needless to say, your folks probably didn't come to your wedding either.
Actually, they did.
Oh, did they?
But I will tell
Weird.
you one thing that my mother said when I told her I was dating an Indian man.
Hmm.
She brought up ISIS, and she said, ISIS, you have to be careful. I'm not shitting you, Janice.
Oh,
That's the first thing she said to me.
mother.
That
It's
made me
just
so
our-
upset. That's
our
like, oh, I
parents-
see brown skin and that's the only thing in my head.
Yeah. Oh,
Oh,
God.
it's so
Our
bad.
parents are such ignorant and like very covert racists that I don't even think they want to admit to themselves, but they are. Very
Right, and that gets reinforced through the church, through the Christian
Absolutely.
church.
Absolutely. It was a no-no that us white people should ever marry someone who was darker than us. Don't you
Wow.
dare. Hey,
Oh, wow. So how did you sisters then, you've been through so much, how did you decide and at what point that you wanted to do a YouTube channel actually exposing some of these things that you grew up with and speaking with other people who also were suffered indoctrination at some point? What brought this about for you?
well, it started with conversations. So Patty moved several states away. I'm actually now in Central Illinois, Janice, my husband and I, after we closed the restaurant and then COVID hit. We were over in India, stuck there for a year. They used to say we had to kind of start our lives over. So we moved a little bit further down where we had some family in Champaign, Illinois is where I'm at now. And then Patty's so far away, we thought, well, let's just start chatting every day on the phone while we're taking our morning
Nice.
walks. And we realized we kept coming back to the same topic about these little traumas in our lives that we were noticing. Like, I think this is because of the cult, because we didn't talk about this throughout our lives because we just brushed it off. We wanted nothing to do with it. But we realized it was affecting us still in ways that we didn't want. And so Patty had made the suggestion, why don't we just start recording ourselves and seeing if it resonates with anyone else? And if you want to take it from there, Pats, maybe our process for starting Apostate Sisters.
Sure. Yeah. It oddly enough, before the pandemic hit, I started accumulating audiovisual equipment just personally. And I got to tell you, I'm not entirely sure why I was doing it. I think Nancy and I had talked even before the pandemic. We had said, like, we've got to do something. Like, maybe we could write a book.
Mhm.
Maybe we could, all of these things. So I don't know what was going on with me. Because I had shut myself out of Facebook, just kind of feeling like it was toxic after 2016 and how I felt like Facebook had spread the misinformation that led to our current situation. So I had like pulled back and decided I didn't want a digital footprint. I didn't want to be able to be found online. And honestly, some of that had to do with the fact of estrangement from my husband's family. Like, I didn't want them coming after me. I didn't know what they were capable of because they believe so heartily that we're doing the wrong thing by not being in their Christian faith. Like, I was actually scared of these things.
Wow.
So I stayed very quiet. But like I said, I needed an iPad stand for some reason. That was a little pandemic-y because I thought, let's put wheels on the bottom. And then, if we're never going to see humans again, I can just wheel my friend around on the whatever. Weird thoughts in your head. Did I accumulate a lot of food when pandemic hit because of my trauma? Yes, I did. Anyway. So I'm accumulating a microphone for no reason. Like, why did I do that? I don't even know why I did that. But my husband has a background in audiovisual stuff. Like I said, he ran the sound at our church. So I'm asking him about what to get. I got a pack of lighting gels like that you see right here. I don't know why I was doing it, but then as it went on, I was like, oh, I'm feeling this. Like there was something welling up inside of me that had to get out. So I started a blog somewhere in that time. Even went to like a conference for mommy bloggers. It was about weed and sex. And then and then I started two other podcasts that were audio only. One was with two of my friends who we considered ourselves a grove of witches at the time. I've had layers of things I've tried out. But I enjoyed that. Like me and these friends, we had a great time doing more than 3 years worth of just us talking. And I got to do the editing and I got to figure out Spotify, getting it up there. And so then when Nancy and I started talking, I was like, well, And so we started making an audio only podcast because it was a thing I knew how to do at that point. And I was like, you know what? If it's just us saying what we need to say, at least it's saved and not just us out on the neighborhood streets talking out into the void,
Mhm.
It's saved and it'll be out there. And maybe there'll be a person that finds it and it helps them. Wouldn't that be great? I'm sorry. Did you hear
Yeah.
all that background noise? There was a lot of background
Yeah.
noise.
It's okay.
Didn't hear anything.
So we're thinking, or I'm thinking like, maybe this is it. Maybe we can share this. Why not? Right. So I was like, fine, let's just do it. I didn't have the mic figured out because I didn't actually, I had a mic, but I didn't have the right hookup to make it connect to something.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I was accumulating things for what seemed like no reason, but clearly I had a desire that I wasn't acknowledging or something. So I sat down with my iPad and it's terrible quality. It's still out there. It's our very first episode where it's just called The Worldwide Church of God. And we talked about what happened to us. And it was irreverent and we said F-bombs. And all the feedback we got from that episode was like, thank you. No one else is talking about it like this. Like everyone still kind of is, being very like, oh, let's talk about church history and the theology and we're like, fuck this shit that happened to us. Sorry if you have to edit that.
We were
Yes.
so mad in that recording, and you
We
can
were.
we let
Yeah.
loose, and the rest was
Good for
history. Like
you.
we gotta keep going.
That's how people
Wow.
loved it. That's why they
Mhm.
loved it, because we were being real about what happened. And so we got, I think, 9 episodes into that. And I'm a hardcore YouTube watcher. Like I'd been spending the last 2 years at least before that, just like atheist stuff. Like let's purge the crap that's in my head, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so I'd been following Godless Granny. She was someone I was a patron of just personally.
nice.
And, she has the names of her supporters go across the screen at the end of her shows. So I just messaged her like, hi, I've been a supporter for a while and I just started this podcast. Would you change my name in your credits to Apostate Sister? Because I thought that'd be just like I didn't want to put myself out there. I'm not allowed to. I'm a cult kid.
Right.
We don't talk about ourselves. We don't lift ourselves up. We're not, you're right. It makes you bad. So I just wanted that. And then she was like, well, do you want to come on my show? And we had like 17
Wow.
subscribers at the time. And I was like, Nancy, what do you think? If we do it, our face is out there forever, and this is me who I didn't want any digital footprint. Right.
Right. Right.
But she was
Actually,
into it. What?
I had also been like at some point during when I had owned the restaurant up in Madison, I had started listening to people like, I think it was Seth Andrews I had heard first about he was talking about like 80s rock music or something and how people would say it's satanic, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. In fact, I think you sent it to me, Pats. And then I found Matt Dillahunty, and he was talking about this bullshit letter that his parents sent to him on his birthday, and he was breaking it down so beautifully. The tactics of manipulation that his parents were using against him for being a non-believer. And I was like, whoa, where has this been all my life? And so I started listening more and more from that point. This is kind of early on for me when I started to get like, oh, there's actually people out there that really don't believe same as me and they think the same way. Maybe I'm not such a weirdo. Okay. So I kept listening, and both Patti and I just kind of fell into that atheist space. And eventually I got to the point where I was comfortable saying I'm atheist because I'm just not convinced. I don't believe. And I felt okay with that. I was so scared to admit that to myself. I'm like, why am I still trying to change myself to satisfy other people? I can't do it.
Oh,
So
yes.
that was also going around at the same time. You and I were looking into.
Did you go on the Godless Granny then?
We did.
We decided to do it. It was, I think, February 17th of last year. And she was so nice. And it was, I had COVID. I had COVID when we went on, right? We scheduled it and then I got COVID.
Yes,
so my first appearance was I had COVID, and there Nancy and I were talking with Godless Granny and telling our story, telling about the Worldwide Church of God. I don't think we had done the full depth of research about Herbert yet. But we knew
I
enough.
think so. We knew enough that we just went in there and we're just like, fuck it. Our faces are out on the internet now. We're strong enough that we're not going to hide. So what if we knew people might threaten our lives and get really toxic and disgusting and misogynistic? Fine. What can people do to us that they haven't already? Right. And so that was like our mindset. And we're like, no, we're going to rise above that. You can keep.
So did people see you?
Huh?
Did people see you on the Godless Granny? Like, did they reach out to you? Did your following start to grow?
Yeah, we got a lot of I should go back and look at that. I don't think I can see that data. But yeah, we got a lot of subscribers off of that live show because it was the first time we were out there. I think the one, it was Harmonic Atheist. I think that was the interview that was
Mills, of course.
Explosion.
He's also kind of a first stop shop. And I know Neil, the 604 Atheist deconstruction story wasn't too long after that. You know, the usual suspects. But we're in sort of this weird space where we're ex-culty and we're trying to talk about like religious trauma, but also we're atheists. In fact, a lot of the survivors from Worldwide Church of God have actually found themselves into more mainstream Christianity, like evangelicalism, same as how Patti and I found ourselves there. And so a lot of people are still stuck in that little...
Yeah, they're still drinking the Kool-Aid.
Just slightly different flavor. Essentially, even though they think it's a little bit better. Right.
In some ways, I think we had the benefit of the cult because it's so easy to see the ways that people are controlled and the tactics used against them when it's a cult, because they're not really trying to hide it. They don't have the layers of cultural protection around it like a mainstream church does. But once you've seen it in a cult, you're like, oh no, that's the same stuff going on in the other churches. And then you're like, oh, I think that's the same stuff that kind of happens at a weirdly low level in all of society.
Right.
In a sort of interesting way, I almost thought I liked the cult, not liked, that's way too strong of a word. Like, I tolerated the cult better than evangelicalism because I often describe it as at least the cult would stab you right in the face. An evangelicalist, they will stab you in the back when you're turned around. Like they'll stab you in the back, but be nice to your face. You know, that was like the best way I could describe it. Like everything is so much more hidden in evangelicalism.
Right.
But the tactics are still there. It's just that with the cult, it was blatantly obvious. And there's this great quote out there. Shit, and I'm probably gonna fuck it all the way up, but something along the lines of like, a church really is just a large popular cult, whereas a cult is a small unpopular church. It's something like that. Really, it's just a cult when there's not as many followers. Right.
And people get very caught up in, well, a religion can't be a cult because it's too big, but that's not the way I see it, because, you know, even if we look back at ancient Roman gods and ancient Greek gods, people believed in those deities. They sacrificed to them. They prayed to them. And now we look and we laugh. Oh, you know, that's obviously just mythology. Well, eventually Christianity will be seen the same way.
I hope so. That is our goal, isn't it?
I am here to hasten that shit. That's what I will tell
Yay!
you. Yeah.
So true. So then you had, it was the Worldwide Church of God was the name of your audio podcast, but now you have transitioned. The Apostate Sisters is a YouTube channel. So it's your YouTube show. Is it a podcast? You consider it a podcast, the Apostate Sisters, or?
Well, yes, we started it as a podcast. It's always been called the Apostate Sisters, actually. That was the name of our first episode, was Worldwide Church of God.
Oh, but, I see.
So yes, I continue making our main podcast episode in video and audio for now. And YouTube considers some of our episodes to be part of the podcast, but honestly, maybe someone has a better definition than me, but I'm like, the lines are kind of blurry now. So we called it a podcast because we started audio only. But I think we're recognizing now, because our work has started to encompass so many interviews along with the topics that we want to talk about, as far as like bringing in people like yourself, you know, in the helping side of things, bringing in former culties to talk, that we're recognizing like maybe we just need to be transitioning to where we have a weekly episode that goes out, whatever the content in it is, instead of trying to piece all these things out into podcast, not podcast. So
Neat.
yes and no.
Oh. And you just actually celebrated 1,000 subscribers, I think, on your that is very exciting. That's wonderful. And it's interesting to me that cults exist across all of society, every country, and they're certainly not only religious, but religion, because of the fear piece, is really easy to be culty. But there are political cults, nutritional cults about everything, cults about horses. Like there are cults about very weird shit that people just don't even think about in their day-to-day life. But then we look back on the BITE model, behavior, information, thoughts, and emotions. Dr. Steve Hassan came up with that model, and using that as a way to potentially gauge, is this group or this relationship, are there culty elements and aspects? Are people trying to control any of these for me? And I think that's so important for people to be aware of, because as we've been talking about, we cult hop. We can go from one to another. We've been conditioned for certain things, and so we feel comfortable with those things. And we have needs. We want to be accepted. We want community. We want security. All these different things, and religion and cults and conspiracy theories tie those up with a shiny red bow and promise they have all the answers. So I love that you guys are sisters, but also that you are women speaking out in the atheist space. So hooray, hooray, because we need more women who are doing exactly what you're doing, what I'm doing. Of course, my dear friend, Courtney Hurd, she's the Godless Mom. She's all over the internet as well. Shannon Q, another very popular woman atheist content creator. There are more of us all the time, and I'm so grateful I got to join you on your show to speak out about my experiences. Yes. Thank you for joining me on mine to share about your experience. And I hope everybody goes right away to YouTube and signs up and supports you and subscribes to the Apostate Sisters.
Thank you so much, Janice. It was such an honor to be on your channel now to tell our story. And I must say, you are absolutely fabulous to interview with. I felt so nice and calm and seen and really heard. I appreciate it, Janice.
I'm so glad. Well, thank you. I hope as a therapist that's how people feel. Want everyone to feel seen and heard.
You're on the right path.
Thank you. Wow. Well, let's stay in touch. Maybe I'll come back on your show sometime, have you back on here again. Oh, Nancy, I did want to ask, you mentioned a book. Had you written a book at some point? You talked about Jason.
Now, it's not necessarily related to religious trauma per se, but more the result of religious trauma. I do have a novel called Velakari. That is a Tamil word, which is one of my husband's languages from India. It's in South India. And it means essentially like foreign girl or white girl. The reason I picked that name was because Patti and I had gone to India. This was during right before COVID started. She left before it started, and I stayed a year because I couldn't get home. But the kids there just kept calling out Velakari, Velakari to me and Patti. And eventually we're asking her, like, what does that mean? That's a cool word. Patti noticed it. And it means like foreign guy. There were some people we had met there that had never seen, a white person, Westerner before. And so the name kind of stuck. My pen name is Anna Siduri. I didn't use my real name because I thought that would be fun to have sort of a synonym. Yes. My middle name, and Siduri is a character from Epic of Gilgamesh. It was like the goddess of beer and wine, something along those lines. So okay. And the story really is just aspects of my own life, starting from like when I was deployed to Iraq and some of the situations of like maybe, what a young woman goes through when she's deployed. situations there. And then she takes a 2-week trip to New Zealand for her R&R, which is what I did, because she wanted to go out and see the world. She didn't really know what she was going to do with her life yet. But I find a way to get her over to India, and that's where the second half of the book takes place. And she meets this entrepreneur kind of adventure seeker in India, which of course was inspired by my husband. So I found a way somehow to turn it into a story while also realizing how much religious trauma there was there, even though I barely touch on it in my book. I turned my protagonist into this young, she had a strict Scottish father in the Catholic faith. And I didn't even want to go into the whole, cult aspect, but I realized that it was more therapeutic just for myself to write it. It was my story. And I wrote it with no intention of publishing it at all. But needless to say, I had a lot of time to work on this over in India for that entire year during COVID with non-English speakers. And so I just stuck myself into the book. So yeah, it's available on Amazon. People can go check it out if they're curious.
Can you spell it?
Sure.
The title.
A VELLAKARI by Anna Sidori on Amazon. Yes. So
thank you. That's so cool. Wow. Okay. Then with that, I'm going to thank you both again and say goodbye, and hopefully we'll stay in touch and be in touch again soon. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in today for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Take care, everyone.
bye.